It's been a while, but it's finally time for another episode. What are you doing here? 2 months is a little more than a while. Well, yeah, I know, but I literally graduated both high school and university between episodes. Okay, well that's a bit dramatic. I also got seriously another one? It's supposed to be New Year, New You, not New Year, No You. Okay, that one was pretty good, but no. How many of you are there? If you posted any less, your videos could be found as suspicious sand. Okay, I get it, but you see, here comes the excuses. Shush, first I finally got COVID. That doesn't last 2 months. And then I was... No one cares. Okay, fine, just let me start the video. Jeez, those guys are annoying. What a loser. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be him. The last video was my Christmas episode, so instead of working on my base like I usually do, I went out into the ocean and built an island filled with all the 12 days of Christmas on it, as well as a small little sapling in the middle. But the episode before that, I made a ton of progress on my mega base by pretty much terraforming the entire thing. And despite how much fun I had doing it, it definitely looks a lot better than the big empty Squarespace it was before. And speaking of Squarespace, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Yeah, that was a terrible segue. This video is not even sponsored. Even though I've already spent hundreds of hours on this project, I feel like really all I've done is work on the landscaping, so I think it's finally time I bite the rather large temple-shaped bullet and make this place a little more base-like. That's cool and all, but I thought you said you were building the doors next. Yeah, well, in order to make the doors, I'm gonna need a lot of wood, so I think I want to build a tree farm first, and then I also... You liar. And then I also just thought if I did the doors now, then no one cares. Unless this is your first Minecraft video, which if it is, I'm sorry, then you'll know how these videos go. You start with a slightly overdramatic intro, then spend the next 20 minutes gathering resources before finally getting to your build. And somewhere in the middle, you can always make fun of some other YouTubers if you want. There's a mob in Minecraft that drops wool, and you won't believe what it's called. Subscribe for part 2. But I think I already have enough resources to build at least one of the temple's towers, so why don't we start off with a time-lapse. And there's the first tower finished. Even though this is already a pretty decent sized build, overall the temple's not even a quarter finished, so there's still lots left to do. Yeah, this is gonna take a while. Of course this will get better as I build more, but just as I figured, the size of the cave makes this building look really small. From over here it's like comparing my brain to the size of my skull, or it'd at least be the size of one of my temples anyway. Anyway, easily my favorite part of this build is all the roofs. Up until about an hour before I started the time-lapse, the roofs were going to be made entirely out of dark prismarine, but I think creating a gradient using the warped wood and fungus, along with playing around with some of the lighting, makes it look a lot better. Hopefully it's pretty obvious, but this build is heavily inspired by Japanese architecture, and I'm not typically someone who likes to dance, but in order to keep that style I did have to raise the roof a bit. Like I said, it's obviously only a small part of the temple, but it should be at least enough to give you a pretty good idea of the overall style. And also if we head inside, the crafting table looking floor design should make a bit more sense now. And yes, I'm purposely keeping my camera pointed down, there's not a whole lot to see above me. Back up at the top of the tower, we have this little open section, but I feel like it looks a bit empty. So to fix that, I want to try adding in a bell. Yeah, I think the actual bell might just be a bit too small, so I guess I'm just gonna have to build my own out of gold. Although it looks like I used up most of my gold last episode, so that might be a bit too expensive. But luckily I'm not using an anvil, so I actually get to decide for myself when something's too expensive. It just means I'm gonna have to do a bit of mining. And I think the best place to get a bunch of gold is gonna be in my netherite mines, as if you look past all the fiery flames of sunshine and happiness, there's pretty much gold everywhere you look. And I've started working on a future project that's going to need a lot of ancient debris, so as you can see the mines have been getting pretty big, which means there's going to be lots of gold. I'm sure you can probably guess what that future project's going to be, but if not I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Retherite Recon. But anyway, let's start mining some gold. I think that should be enough, so let's head back home and build a bell. There, that looks much better. I did, however, just get rid of any chance I had at winning a Nobel Prize. It turns out I had a lot more resources than I originally thought I did, so before I have to go get more, I can easily build at least one more of these towers. Okay, the amount of slimes I've had to kill down here is starting to get a bit ridiculous. I hardly ever show it on camera because I don't think anybody actually cares. But if we head down to my storage system, you can see just how many slime balls I have compared to all the other mob drops, and realistically I probably throw away over half of them. And no, I still haven't built the proper entrance to my storage room. And speaking of mobs in my base, you may have seen this a few times in the background, but this zombie has been sitting in this boat for months now, and I still haven't given it a name, so if you have any good ones, let me know with a comment. I mean, I could name it myself, but it'd likely end up being some terrible pun like Zombabwe. Anyway, wandering traders don't spawn in caves anymore, so I think that's just about all the distractions I can come up with for now, so I guess I have to start building now. Unless editor me somehow manages to mess it up, the build process should have been pretty clear from the time-lapse, but I'm gonna talk about it again anyway. And since the frame is made entirely out of spruce, to make it a bit easier I just planted a few trees, and then from there we just need to remove the leaves, and then move it around a bit. Perfect. And with that done, the next step is to fill up all these sections with a bunch of terracotta and sandstone. And there's not a whole lot to talk about for this step, as it's pretty much just, well, placing a bunch of terracotta and sandstone. That takes care of all the boring stuff, so we can now start on some of the detailing. Starting off with the balconies, which are made of wood that's about as warped as my sense of humor. And then on the balcony I'll place a few tables with flower pots on them, as the more details I add, the more it looks like I know what I'm doing. And the plant I decided to put in these pots is bamboo, as I do technically sort of kinda live in a jungle. Ish. But just so it makes a little more sense, I think what I want to do is head out to the outer platforms, ow, and just plant a bunch of it down here, which after a bit of time should look pretty good. Yeah, I think that, along with the mushrooms, could add a lot of life to this place. But we're not doing that today, so back to the tower. The next step is to add in all these wooden details you see underneath the roof. So to do that, I'll start by placing some dark oak fence and fence gate. I'll also add some trapdoors to condense as much detail as possible. And then I'll use some soul lanterns to fix the immense lack of presence in a sense that it needs more light. But of course I can't place them here, hence the need for a spruce fence. Now all that's left is adding in a door, which I wouldn't recommend going through as you may just become past tense. There's all the detailing done, now we just need to add on the roof. Although it ended up pretty much just looking like a gradient, this roof was originally supposed to have a pattern going along the edge, which is pretty common in this type of building. And you can still see a bit of a wave pattern in the warped wood, but because there was only 3 blocks to work with, it's pretty much just a gradient, which is fine too. To finish this section off, I added another soul lantern hanging from each of the corners of the roof. So with that, we can go ahead and copy paste it to the top and middle, just slightly switching up the middle's flowers so they don't all look exactly the same, before finishing it off with the bell on top. Which would mean that this tower is done, if I didn't completely forget about the bottom. There, the second tower is now complete. Another thing I really like about these towers, especially when you have multiple of them, is all the soul lanterns, as because there's so many of them, it almost looks like they're wrapped in fairy lights, or maybe even being swarmed by a bunch of blue fireflies, which I think looks really cool. Although I do think the lighting on the other two look a lot more like Minecraft's fireflies. Even though we've already done a bunch of building, we've still only built half of the towers, and whether you're a half glass full or half glass empty kind of person, there's still far too much air in the cup, and it looks terrible, so why don't I start building the other two? So let's go through the build process of these two towers. Didn't you, like, just do that? They're all exactly the same. Well, yeah, but there's always more to talk about when it comes to
No one cares.
Okay, are those the only 2 words you know? First off, it's 3 words, and secondly, he does have a point. If you say one more word about it, I'm clicking off this video right now and going to watch a 3-hour Mario Sunshine speedrun. Okay, fine, I'll do a time-lapse. Jeez. Good, I have a banner to steal. And just like that, all 4 of the completely unique towers are done. And having 4 of them definitely expresses a much more grand feeling. And speaking of Express, do you ever feel like someone's watching you and collecting all your personal information? Well, with Express, I'm not acting for you unless I'm getting paid. Okay, fine, we're still not sponsored, but to be fair, I'd hardly call whatever that was acting. Anyway, I've already done a pretty decent amount of building, and as they say, lots of building requires lots of blocks, therefore you probably don't have lots of blocks. Even just to finish these 2 builds, I had to AFK at my Guardian farm for a while, which explains the extra 100 levels I've gained. And because of this block shortage, I had to make a very unfortunate cutback and not do any of the interiors. But in this case, the unfinished interior actually looks pretty cool, so it should be fine for a while. At least that's what I'm gonna tell myself. But even with the cutbacks, I still have to build the main temple in the middle, which is easily bigger than all 4 of these towers combined. So basically this is just a drawn out way of saying I need more blocks. And the first step in doing so is to head over to the mesa, which I believe is just through this door. Or not. Maybe this one? There we go, only one off. And I'm gonna be needing quite a bit of terracotta, so let's just switch over to my flame bow and do a bit of biome melting. And then we can just go over here and do the exact same thing to the desert, mainly for the sandstone, but a little extra sand never hurt anyone either. Well, except for that one guy, but I'm sure he's fine. That takes care of the 2 main resources that I needed, so now all the other resources should be pretty quick and easy to get, so let's go ahead and collect all those. There, that should be everything. But before we can put all these resources to use, all my tools are getting pretty low on durability, so I think it's finally time we finish a project from 2 episodes ago. That of course being our warden farm. And yes, I did just travel over 20,000 blocks to point at this for a few seconds. The farm itself works fine, but what I need to do now is turn all the catalysts that the wardens drop into XP, and I'll do this by simply blowing it up. But I obviously can't just build a blast chamber in the middle of nowhere, so it's time we build the first of many buildings. Well, at least the first normal-sized building, anyway. As far as the block palette goes, it's very similar to what we did for the towers. We start with some spruce wood to create a frame, then use sandstone and white terracotta to fill it in, and finish it off with a blue roof. And yeah, that looks terrible. I promise it will look a lot better when it's done. To make the building look a bit less like it should be the thing going in the blast chamber, let's add some slabs and stairs and whatnot. That takes care of most of the build, but over here it looks like someone broke the 4th wall about as well as She-Hulk did, so let's fix it by adding in a small tower. There, that looks pretty good, although it does make this main roof look a little boring. So to fix that, I'll add on some weird spiky things using birchwood, then use some sandstone to create a sort of moon shape, and finish it off by extending the dark oak a bit. Oh, that's a good idea. And this creates a really interesting roof design, which is something that I want all these outer buildings to have. And speaking of which, there is going to be a lot of buildings, so I want to make it pretty obvious which is which. So since this building's going to be used for all my sculk catalysts, let's just add a few pieces of sculk to the tower, as well as a small XP storage tank over here. And just to fill up this section a bit more, I'm also adding a few barrels with XP bottles on them. All that's left to do now is to make a few pathways and hang a few soul lanterns. And there's the first of the outer buildings complete. Of course I'll be switching up the color palettes and whatnot for all the other builds, but let me know what you think of the general style, preferably before I build almost 100 of them. And one thing I really like about these builds is because they're practically built into the wall, I'm not going to have to build a back to a single one of them. Anyway, the outside may be done, but unfortunately this building does actually need an interior, but as you may have picked up, I don't really like doing them that much, so I just got someone else to do it for me. There, it's done. I expect my paycheck in the mail by Friday. Yeah, of course. Okay, let's see how we did. Hey, that actually looks pretty good. Still not paying him though. Hopefully it's pretty obvious, but because XP comes in bottle form, I thought it'd be cool if we made this place look like a bar. I mean a juice bar. Of course we have a few stools next to the counter where we have our friend Arnold stand serving up some drinks. And I guess other than me, he's actually the first resident of the cave. And then over here in the tower we have a bunch of extra storage for all our juice related needs. And last but not least, over in the corner we have a little booth where you can stand up on the chairs and smash your head against the light. And this is actually the first time in a long time that I've used paintings in a build. Also turns out a mix of azaleas and moss blocks makes a really nice green carpet. But anyway, this room obviously doesn't give me any XP, so it basically acts as an entrance to our blast chamber, which will be behind this door. And that's going to require a room that's a little bit bigger than this one. Much better. It's probably not necessary as all the explosions will be in the center of the room, but just to be safe, I think I want to cover this whole place in obsidian, which conveniently also means I won't have to build another interior. Yeah, that's not going to be nearly enough, so I guess we have to go to the end to do some mining. And I guess this would be a great time to test out my new shrink arrows. There, that works nicely. And now we only have to mine a single block of obsidian, which saves a ton of time. For you. And just like that, our blast chamber is finished. And how this thing works is you simply just go up the bubble streams, then walk across the iron trapdoors, placing in your catalysts. It'd obviously be ideal to make this a bit more automated, so I was originally going to use a piston feed tape, but as it turns out, you can't actually push catalysts. So then as soon as I found this out, I went over to my creative test world and spent hours building this mess of a redstone contraption. And basically what this does is it precisely pushes you around, and with the help of an auto-clicker can fill in the blocks pretty much as fast as possible. This would have worked perfectly, but when I was about halfway done designing it, I realized that all this ice wouldn't be safe from the blast. So basically this whole thing was just a waste of my life. But to be fair, I do have an entire shulker box of broken netherite tools, so I can't really say I had a life in the first place. But anyway, even if you're half as amazing at clicking as I am, it really doesn't take long to fill in at all. Oh, what's that? That's not mine. Once all the catalysts are placed, you simply walk off the end and push the button. Yeah, I forgot to install the button. Once you've placed all the skull catalysts, you simply just fall down here and press the button that of course exists, and to see how much this gives me, I'll just hold this almost broken elytra. Yeah, that's definitely enough to fix an elytra. I feel like it could almost do a second one. Yeah, so I'd say it's about an elytra and a half of XP. It takes about 3 or 4 of these explosions to fix a pickaxe, so if I need to fix all my tools, I'll probably still use the Guardian farm, but if I just need to fix 1 or 2 of them, or maybe even a few elytras, then this will definitely come in handy. It's also just really satisfying. Anyway, now that we've made the video longer, finished the Warden farm project, I guess it's time we build the temple. There, the temple is almost sort of kind of finished. There's obviously a few things like these balconies, for example, that are fairly similar to the towers, but to make the main building stand out a bit more, I decided to switch out some of the roofs and whatnot for mangrove wood, which I think make it look a lot more interesting. You may have noticed this near the end of the time-lapse, but I also boa constructed a bunch of these snake or possibly sea serpent statues on top of the main roof, which I think add a lot to the build. But probably my favorite thing about the whole build has to be all the gradients and texturing along the roof, which although may not look like much, actually takes quite a long time to do. And I also ran out of warped wood, so I didn't even get to finish the top one. To make the main door, I used a bunch of stripped warp stem and just rotated it around a bunch to create this design, which I think looks really cool. Although as you know from my storage system, I'm really good at building things that don't have proper entrances, so of course this door doesn't actually open, which might be a problem. But a problem for future me, of course. Anyway, like I said, the temple's only almost sorta kinda finished, so let's go get some more warped wood for the roof. I know leaving trees floating is considered treason in most countries and could get you 10 minutes to life in prison depending on the tree, but there's not a chance I'm taking all this down. And all the nether trees technically aren't actually trees, so I think I can all agree that these ones are an exception. That should be enough warped wood, so let's head back home and fix the roof. There, that looks much better. We do, however, still need to hang some lights from the roof, and I think we already have enough of these regular soul lanterns, so let's try making some bigger ones. And to do that, I'll simply just cover a soul campfire with some dark oak wood and deep slate. Yeah, I definitely like the look of those. So now all that's left to do is make the top roof a bit cooler, and as any third grader could tell you, to make something look cooler you simply just add spikes. That'll do. And with all the spikes added, the temple is finally finished. Easily my favorite view of this build has to be while it's raining, as you get this really cool fog effect. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but this build is slightly themed towards the Guardian. Along the base of all the towers we have Guardian eyes, as well as a bigger one up at the top. And then of course there's the giant 2014 style pixel art on the front. That's cool and all, but why would you theme it after a Guardian if they don't even live in caves? They usually live in... Actually, that's kind of a good question. The reason I went with the Guardian is because this build was actually originally built over an ocean monument. But then I realized I'd be starting my Let's Play during the Caves and Cliffs update and building in literally the only spot in the entire world that looks the same. So from there I kinda just picked up the whole temple and threw it into a little hole, which I think makes it look a lot better. But if you do have any ideas to make the Guardian fit into this place a little better, just let me know in that place under the video where all the strange things I say get put between quotation marks. Also, I forgot to mention, unfortunately all the footage of me doing the interior got corrupted, and I don't have any firework rockets to check it out now, so I guess the interior will just have to wait for another time. But anyway, the temple's done, which means the video should probably be done too, so thanks for watching and see you all in the next episode.